Hey everyone, my name is Corey and I'm with Good Evening Tech. Today you are going to learn how to read a CSV file with JavaScript and TypeScript. So I'm going to be writing this project mainly in TypeScript, but for whatever reason you can't install Node or you can't install TypeScript on your local machine, you can follow along in JavaScript. So this is what the finished project looks like right here. What you're going to do is you can grab any CSV file, open it up, and it displays the data. All the data made right here is from something that's called Macaru. It's basically fake data, so this isn't anybody's information. A nice little part about this, it can pull different kinds of data, so it doesn't need to be a certain structure or need to have so many columns. It'll adapt to what it is, and even if there's blank rows, as long as there's a space for it in the CSV, it'll have it there. So first thing we need to do is open your favorite IDE. I'm a fan of Visual Studio Code. I'm going to close down my other finished projects, and we're going to go over exactly what we need to make. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is open up a terminal here, and we're going to create an npm init. So go in here. These options, if you just hit enter the whole way down, it'll autofill them. I know one thing for mine that I want to change is, luckily, after you make these files, you can change them in here. I want it to be the app.js. Even though we're not using this for a development environment, we're just using it for some tools, I still like it to be there. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is build the structure of our project. So we just hit the npm init. Now what we're going to do is create a source folder. This is where we are going to put our app.TypeScript, and we're going to add some bootstrap in there as well. So all I'm going to do in here is hit console.log connected. I always like to do this just to make sure it works. Next thing we'll do is, outside of the source folder, add an index.html. Then I am going to go over and take some files. Take the bootstrap file. So this isn't something I made, it's from the bootstrap website, and it'll just give us a little bit of style. So I'm going to steal my HTML, and then we're going to go over it, exactly what it does. So it's just a boilerplate HTML file linking in that style sheet from the folder. Inside our body, we're going to be using Bootstrap's metrics of containers, rows, and columns. Just a CSV file uploader. And down here we'll have the form where it is uploaded to. And then a final row down here that will be our display area for all the information. Alright, so now what we're going to do is install something called Snowpack. Snowpack's a little bit like Webpack. Yeah, it's Webpack, but it offers just an easier setup that I found. I know from my understanding there's more customization with Webpack, but Snowpack, especially for something like this, is so easy to use. So what we're going to do is run npm install --save-dev. Now what the save dev does is it just makes it a developer dependency, so when you use any npm commands that push it to a production state, it'll get rid of Snowpack. Alright, well that takes a good amount of time. Almost done. Hopefully. Yep, there we go. The next thing we're going to run is npx snowpack. There we go. npx snowpack init. Now what this is going to do is it's going to set Snowpack up. so that Snowpack knows exactly what it needs to do. All right, now we're going to go into our package folder. Oh, it didn't create its own scripts there. Let me see here. Well, what I will do is I am just going to add them myself. So what we're doing here is creating scripts that can be used to shorthand information. There we go. So what we'll do here is we'll do npm, and then we take whatever the blue text is, hit start. Now it's going to start its own server. And there we go. Nothing's going to happen with this. You see it submits itself. Pretty much it doesn't do anything right now. But it's a local server running so that we can test it. But everything seems to be working. Let's go here. Inspect element. Ooh, it's having fun there. Oh, it's looking for the map file. Silly me. This will all be in the GitHub repo I have for this project. Let's see if it's happy there now. Go here. Hit inspect. And it says connected. Sweet. That means our JavaScript file is looking right to it. Alright, now let's open this up, and then open my master one, and we can go over exactly what I put in here. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is there was IDs on all of the objects that we need to get. We're going to do get element by ID, CSV form, as HTML form. Element, there we go. So this part right here is just TypeScript. It's just like documentation to let us know exactly what I'm pulling from the DOM. CSV file. That's HTML input element. It's display area equals document dot get element by ID. Display area as HTML div element. Alright, we're going to hit save on that. As you can see, it's the form ID, that input, and that display. Alright, now as we go down, I'll create a variable here called final values. What that is going to hold is the array of information that is displayed. Now, what we're going to do is add a CSV form, add event listener. So what this is the submit. So on that input, when somebody clicks to submit it, this event will be fired. Here. Whenever you're adding an event listener, the first argument that's passed is always the event of what happens. So you've probably seen this text a lot before, but what this is doing right here on our other form, when we would hit submit, it refreshes the page. What this will cause, let's see if it works. You see it doesn't refresh up here anymore. So we're preventing it from submitting the form. The next thing we're going to do is create a file reader. So this is something that is inside the browsers. It's a class that they have, and what it's used for is to open and interpret data from files that's given to it. Next thing we're going to grab is the CSV file. So this is an array, but the first object out of it is the one that we want to grab. Now going down, what we're going to do, I'm going to create a little bit of space here, and we're going to run read as, help if I could spell, text, and then we'll put in that input. So this object up here will have this read as text method on it, but what we also need with it is a function that we're going to put right inside of here to tell it exactly what to do with the information. So before we do that, I want to create a couple functions so that we can create code that's not as all over the place. So first function we're going to create is called the generate table. I'm going to add a word in here if you've never seen it before. It's what creates an asynchronous function. What that means is this function is able to run in the background, and once we go back into the event listener, I'll explain why this is important. We're going to create an array table with a type of string as an array of arrays of string, and then it's going to return a promise that is of type string. So what this is right here is whenever you have an asynchronous function, it returns a promise. A promise is something that says, hey, this will return as soon as this code is done. But we're going to go down here and go over some string interpolation. This is a nice tool in JavaScript that lets us basically make HTML inside of this instead of doing document.create elements and then have to set all of its attributes. We can just dynamically type it out here and just go over the information. Alright, so on top of this, if we needed to access a variable, we can use the $sign with the curly brackets. So you go in here, get the array table. Now we're going to be building the head in here. So I'm going to grab the 0th item. So if we saw in those CSV files, let's see if I can open one here. Let's see what my Mac chooses to open this with. Well, while that's loading, just keep typing it out. .map of value, and then create our little function here. Return the table head scope of val. So what that's doing is it's taking the first set and then putting it out as the table heads, because how a CSV file is set up, the first array will be the top level documents. So if we grab that 0th one, it'll do this, the name, the city, and then the state. Alright, now going down with this, something we have to do with the map function. If we don't add this join right here, it'll put commas at the end of everything, and it just doesn't look good. Alright, but going down with this, alright, inside of here, we're going to do another map. Array table.map. We're going to pull the index in here too, and I'll show you why in a second. So if the index equals 0, so the first element, we're just going to have it return. So it's going to skip over this. But now what we're going to do is add that in right there. Why are you yelling at me? All right. Then we are going to add those. Oh, that's why it's yelling at me. Oops, I forgot. There we go. And then we'll add that one here. Always a parenthesis. We're going to map out the array that's inside of the array. Perfect. Subvel. Visual Studio's killing me on these parentheses. Alright, and all of these right here, these are not quotations. They're called backticks. So if you have a QWERTY keyboard, American keyboard or British, I think they all follow QWERTY, but if you're in America, you should have a QWERTY keyboard. It's the key to the left of the 1. But we will go in here, run that out. And then we can't forget our little join here. And perfect. That should be our function here. Oh, no. Forgot another join. Basically, if you didn't add these, you would see a bunch of commas just randomly scattered throughout the project. There is rhyme to reason where it puts them, but it just doesn't work with this kind of string interpolation. All right, make sure that's good to go. Now we're going to go back up and we are going to use that function inside of the function we have to create for this reader file. So what we're going to do, CSV reader.onload equals a function, and it receives an event item. So I'm going to type this out and we're going to talk about it a little bit. So this is our object to read the file. When we call this down here to read as text, it's going to use this function in whatever's passed to it. So we're passing the input, which is that CSV file, and once it's done reading it, it'll go to this load function, and this is how we pull it out of there. I know it seems confusing of how the order goes, but this is not called until this happens. So we're just setting up a function. Alright, and now what we're doing in here is we are just checking to see if that is of type string. There we go. So we're checking this variable to make sure what it returns to us is text. If it's not text, it's just going to skip everything that it does. Now something we get to do that's super fun is regex. So I'm going to type it out and then we're going to talk about exactly what's happening in here. Alright, so what this is going to do is it's going to check for any new line splitter. You're like, well, what's that? If we open this up right here. Oh, did I already close it out? Well, we'll open it back up. But while that loads again, what this is doing is when a CSV file is made, it'll have value 1, comma, value 2, value 3. When the row ends, it doesn't use a comma or whatever delimiter is in there. It'll use this new line. It'll use this special character. What this means to a program is, hey, create a new line for us to use. So what we're doing here is we are finding everything that is like a new line and splitting it down into arrays. The split method returns whatever values are given to it into arrays. Now what we are going to do on this array object is use a for each, create a function inside of it. Now this will be each individual array inside of values. And what we're going to do here is final values. This object we created up here, we're going to push, split, comma. So if that was a little confusing to you, what's happening at the top is we are separating it by the rows. We know every single row ends with a new line character. And then we are going to separate it into different arrays by the comma. So we're going to separate it by the columns instead of the rows. Alright, now we get to use that generate table. And we're giving it something of type string as an object. This is just TypeScript formatting, so if you're just using JavaScript, you don't need to do this part. I wonder if it ever opened my file. No, my MacBook's having a hard time living right now. But oops, didn't mean to add curly brackets. So this is an asynchronous function, so we get to do something special off of it. We get to call a .then. So a .then will be returned something. This result is this right here, this return. So what we're going to do is create a function for that inside of it. So once this runs, it'll, oh geez, tripping up on my words. Once this is created, this return, it will return it as this result, and then we can do something else with it. I'm going to grab that display area .inner HTML and set it to that result. And now we're going to do some formatting on the side. So I'm going to grab more elements. We're going to grab the table head. And we're going to grab the table D. I don't know what the D stands for, but I'm sure it was important at some point. But it's the individual columns. Now we're going to create a little function to have inside of here. Alright, so what we are going to do in here, my spelling is on point today. We're going to set the inner HTML to itself, but we're going to grab the first character and then we're going to uppercase it and then add the rest of it with, I believe it's slice. Yep. Alright, and if you just give slice one argument, this is where it's going to copy the array. And remember, strings are just arrays of characters. It's going to grab it from that point forward. So everything, we grab the 0th element, so the first character, and then we want to add the rest of the element back to it. It's a nice little format. So all we have to do from that is these headers and these TDs, these columns, they return an array because there can be more than one of them. So we're just going to iterate over every little value in there. And if you haven't seen a for of loop, it's just like a for each, but we're creating a throwaway variable that's only inside of here that will only be used once. And if you're asking why is this a consonant since it changes with every value, it's recreated every single time that it runs. All right. I think I have everything in there, and let's see if it works. This is always the fun part, when you get to click the button. Boom, it works. Perfect. Let's try it with the bigger folder. So this mock data one has about 1,000 rows in it. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a delay, and then it posts them. To local uppercase. Let's see what I broke there. The only reason that could also go off is if there was no letter or the row was blank. Boo-doo-boo. Oop. There we go. Let's try that again. As you can see with the local dev environment, it refreshes the page every single time. Perfect. Every time you make a change. But as you see with the mock data, there was a little bit of a delay. The browser's catched it so far, so the delay is not going to be as bad. But this is why we used an async function. So that's why we use this async right here, is JavaScript works off of a loop. If we just ran this as a normal function and instead of putting this .then, just had this code on the outside of it, it would have ran this function and instantly moved on to all of this code, and it would have returned all as undefined because it was not done making this. So usually you see async functions with net calls and trying to call back to an API, but if you're handling a lot of data and you want the user's experience to not freeze or lock up, using an async function is a great idea. Also, with how we're assigning this, you need to wait until this generate table is done. And if somebody uploads 10,000 records, it can take a little bit for it to format it into this string abstraction. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, going from here, you can play around with this, tinker with it, make it your own. Try to break it, try to fix it, try to make it better. But if you like this video, please subscribe and leave a comment down below about recommendations or stuff I should do in the future. And yeah, thank you so much for your time.